Welcome to the Working Man Committee Podcast. I'm your host, Brandon T. And we're going to get into it today. We're going to talk debt ceiling because debt ceiling has been the topic of a lot of things that's happening in Washington, D.C. And so what we're going to do here is we're going to talk about, actually, we're not going to talk. We're going to talk with and about. You know the questions we want to have when we're watching these Sunday shows. We got person on the screen now is Janet Yellen. She is a Treasury Secretary under Joe Biden, or President Biden. She was the Fed chairman when Barack Obama was in office, and she was having a sit down conversation with George Stephanopoulos, and they're going to the thing. So we're going to go and then we're gonna comment, and I like working man, how you sit at the table, you're saying be watching TV or whatever, and then you see something, you're like, you got your questions or whatever you want to be said. That's what we're gonna do here. So with that being said, let's go.
For joining us this morning. Let's start out with the timeline now of this possible default. You said earlier this week that you expect that it could come as early as June 1st. I know you get new information every day. Is that still your best estimate?
Yes, early June is when we project that we will run out of cash, and there is a chance it could be as early as June 1st. Of course, there is a lot of uncertainty, and I plan to update Congress as new information becomes available, but that's still our current thinking.
Are there extraordinary measures you can take around that time, or is that it?
Well, really, that's it. We've been using extraordinary measures for several months now, and our ability to do that is running out, and we will start to run down our cash. And our current projection is that in early June, a day will come when we're unable to pay our bills unless Congress raises the debt ceiling. And it's something I strongly urge Congress to do. Of course, it's appropriate to have negotiations about the budget, about spending priorities. President Biden has presented a detailed.
How about instead of spending the priorities, what we like? Okay, let's say, all right, well, what can we cut? What can we not pay? You know what I'm saying? Is there anything that the federal government shouldn't be paying for? Is there something that we could take a break on paying for? Is there something we could, pay a little less on it later? You know what I'm saying? Is there any of that stuff going on? Like I said, is any, hold on one second. Microphone ain't let me be great. I said, can we cut anything? I mean, ain't they $4, $5, $6 that don't need to be paid over here that the government is paying? Huh? Instead of looking to increase, isn't there anything that can be cut? Come on now. I know it got to be $5, $6. I know there's somebody overpaid that we can let go that ain't necessary. I know there's a few, something that don't need to be bought.
Budget that does cut deficits by $3 trillion over 10 years while investing in the strength of the American economy. But we do need to raise the debt ceiling to avoid economic calamity.
Paint a picture for everyone. What happens on that day? Let's assume for the sake of argument it's June 1st. What happens that day if the debt limit has not been extended?
Well, Treasury finds itself in a position where we're unable to pay all of the bills that come due that day. And this would be really the first time in the history of America.
Hold up. Okay, so Treasury won't be able to pay everything. Okay, bet. So now that turns into what I was saying before. What don't need to be paid? What can be paid late? You know what I'm saying? What can we make a payment arrangement for? Can the government make some payment arrangements out here to pay some stuff? You know what I'm saying? Because there's money that comes in every day to the federal government and so forth. There's some payment arrangements that can be made. I know. Well, I mean, we can get, you know what I'm saying? And we ain't never did it before. It had a problem. I'm pretty sure there's a way we can get in there and get, you know what I'm saying, 2-3 months. You know what I'm saying? Payment plan. We pay the minimum. less than the minimum payment and so forth, and then get down the road. Come on, I'm pretty sure that if we ask nicely, you know what I'm saying, we could probably get about 6 months off. Like I said, history of the country, we ain't never done it. So our credit A1 AAA.
Failed to make payments that are due. And, whether it's defaulting on interest payments that are due on the debt or payments due for Social Security recipients or to Medicare providers, we would simply not have enough cash to meet all of our obligations.
Cash.
And it's widely agreed that financial.
Hold up. One more thing. As many times she said cash so far, that's old school. I love that. Yeah, I said count that cash. You think these people know? It's like Biden created an exploratory committee and so forth to look at digital currencies, and they talk about digital currencies and the way she used the word cash. Like, it ain't their idea. It's somebody else in the government like, oh, digital currency. Because like she talking about how that cash we're gonna run out of, not currency, not money, cash. You see what I'm saying?
And economic chaos would ensue. U.S. Treasury securities are the safest bedrock security underlying the global financial system. A failure of the United States to honor all of its debt would call into question our credit worthiness, even as we get very close to this date. If Congress doesn't act, we're likely to see financial market consequences. In 2011, there was a steep decline in the stock market and our borrowing costs. Back in 2011, the U.S.
Hey, maybe we should borrow so much money. I'm gonna say it's all borrowed cash. You know what I'm saying? The government takes in about $4 to $6 trillion a year. Can't we just spend $4 to $6 trillion a year? I mean, that's a lot of money. Can the federal government just do that?
Was downgraded by the credit rating agencies, there would be permanently higher borrowing costs for Americans for buying a home, buying a car, and a failure to raise the debt ceiling would cause a steep economic downturn.
The question is what to do about it. Of course, you talked about spending cuts. We've now seen 43 Republican senators say they're not going to extend the debt limit without significant spending cuts and other reforms. Of course, the House passed their bill as well, but the president says he's not going to negotiate. So is one possibility that you do a side negotiation on spending cuts? The president says it's not tied to the debt limit. Republicans say it is?
Well, look, I don't want to get ahead of the negotiations that will occur. President Biden has invited the leadership of Congress to the White House on Tuesday. I know he wants to set up a process in which spending priorities and levels are discussed in negotiations.
Why don't we just why y'all just get all on the same page? I mean, if that's what's gonna happen, if it's let's spend less money, spend less money. I mean, I'm pretty sure. Let's be real. This government's so big, they don't even know where the money going half time. And so it's like, well, let's cut the money. Cut it. And too many people say, ouch. Put a little bit back in. But cut the money. Come on now.
But these negotiations should not take place with a gun really to the head of the American people, because
in this climate, do we use that analogy? There was no other analogy to use? Really? That analogy?
But they are taking place with that gun to the head of the American people.
Now, George underlined that analogy.
Well, it's important for Congress to meet a responsibility. Since 1960, the debt ceiling has been raised 78 times. 3 times during the prior administration, always with bipartisan support. And it simply is unacceptable for Congress to threaten economic calamity for American households and the global financial system as the cost of raising the debt ceiling and getting agreement on budget priorities. But of course, a negotiation about spending levels and priorities should take place, and the president is more than prepared to engage in that negotiation.
Of course, there's always the chance with this kind of negotiation, this kind of brinksmanship, that you don't reach a deal, and then it comes back to the president. He said on Friday night that he's not ready to invoke the 14th Amendment. Of course, the 14th Amendment says that full faith and credit of the United States should not be questioned, and the implications of that would be, if he invoked it, is the United States would just continue to issue debt, saying it's unconstitutional not to. Now, the president said he's not ready to do that, but it didn't seem like he took it off the table. So is it still a possibility?
Look, our priority is to make sure that Congress does its job. There is no way to protect our financial system and our economy other than Congress doing its job and raising the debt ceiling and enabling us to pay our bills. And we should not get to the point where we need to consider whether the president can go on issuing debt. This would be a constitutional crisis.
But is it on the table? Is it something that could be considered? Are you saying, you just said there's no way this can be done without Congress? Is that a hard and fast position that the president will under no circumstances invoke the 14th Amendment?
Look, all I want to say is that it's Congress's job to do this. If they fail to do it, we will have an economic and financial catastrophe that will be of our own making. And there is no action that President Biden and the U.S. Treasury can take to prevent that catastrophe.
I'm still not exactly clear on whether it's on the table or off the table. Is it a break glass in case of emergency option?
Look, I don't want to consider emergency options. What's important is that members of Congress recognize what their responsibility is and avert what will surely be, regardless of how it's handled, what option is used to handle it, an economic and financial catastrophe.
It sounds like you're saying you don't want to, but you may have to.
George is like, push the button.
Well,
just push the button and say McCarthy had to push the button.
What to do if Congress fails to meet its responsibility? There are simply no good options, and the ones that you've listed are among the not good options.
Final question. I want to ask you a question about the banking crisis. We've seen 3 bank failures this year. 2 more regional banks appear to be on the edge. Do you still believe that our banking system is strong and resilient? We don't have a systemic problem?
I do believe that. I believe our banking system has strong capital levels and access to liquidity. We've taken decisive action to make sure that difficulties at a few banks don't create contagion that undermines the confidence of depositors in the safety of their deposits in the banking system. And the tools we used previously, we would be prepared to use again if necessary. But while some bank stocks are under downward pressure, earnings have been under pressure. The banks have access to liquidity and are well capitalized, and I have confidence in the overall strength of the banking system.
Madam Secretary, thanks for your time this morning.
Yep, so working man. So you see where they at. You got, you know what I'm saying, you got people wanting the 14th Amendment for political reasons to say, yeah, we had to do it because of them. They really want that to happen. You know what I'm saying? They see Trump coming up, and then DeSantis is running, but you know what I'm saying, you know, he got his social issues going on, and then the rest of the Republicans. And they know Biden is a weak candidate, so they're like, hey, do something splashy and they carry you across. But with that being said, it's been a Working Man Committee podcast, and this has been a reaction video. Like, subscribe, and get in the comments and tell me how you feel. With that said, we'll talk to you later. Peace.